Hello everyone, this is Gary from Fantastic Fundas, and today in this lecture we are going to talk about the communalism in India as happened because of British and communalism. Right. So this is what we are going to talk about, that how Britishers were purporting communalism in India. Now, many of you have heard this policy of divide and rule. You ask anyone, they'll say yes, we know very well that how Britishers supported communalism in India. They followed the policy of divide and rule. But as IAS aspirants and as aspirant for any other exam, you must know the meaning of this divide and rule, how it was followed, and was it just the policy of divide and rule because of which the Britishers were able to increase communalism in India. Let us explore that. Now, the basic purpose of the Britishers for increasing communalism was just one purpose, and that was the perpetuation of the British Empire and to remove all threats that became a threat to British Empire. So it was the continuation of the British Empire for which they were doing everything. And why this so? Because British Empire meant a lot of money for them. So at this time, something was happening very strongly, and this was the nationalist movement. This nationalist movement was eroding British Empire. Now, many people ask, oh, we got freedom just because of one person. That's foolish, because we got freedom because a lot of people. National movement was having some impact on the British Empire, and that is why Britishers wanted to erode it. And how do we know they wanted to erode it? Because they started increasing communalism in India when national movement started raising its head against the British Empire. That's how the communalism was spread by the Britishers. That's the reason actually because of which it happened. Now, we know that Britishers wanted to spread the communalism, but how do they want to spread? How do they do that? What is the premise? What is the logic that they present to the people? The logic that these people presented to the people is that they wanted to protect whom? Minorities. They wanted to protect the minorities from domination and suppression by the majority. That was their pretext of communalism. Now, you see, please understand one thing, how wrong they were. Now, all religions are very powerful, you understand that. Whatever they teach is the core of humanity, whether it is Sikh or Hindu or Muslim or whatever, or Christianity. Now, in all these religions, they are very strong religions. Do you think that these even need protection? Because they are so strong in themselves, and if you follow your religion properly, then there can be no threat. Now, if there is no threat, whom they want to protect? They say protect minorities. They create the fear in the mind of the people that you are a minority. Now, your religion is in danger. How can religion be in danger? You see, that is how Britishers are misusing. And you know this already, like Britishers were earlier ruling in India on the basis that on this philosophy of white man's burden. We have discussed this idea, right? White man's burden and welfare of the ruled people. So these were the British philosophies on the basis of which they were ruling India by even now, right? Now, they wanted to civilize the people of India. So, all these things they were saying, but all these things had failed, and we told them ki, listen man, we are already civilized people, we don't need civilization from you. One of the initial civilizations started in India. In any case, civilization started in India, the Indus Valley civilization, much before anything happened in Britain. Even right up to the 15th and 14th century, there was so much of witchism common in Britain that it's unimaginable. And then white man's burden, what kind of white man's burden? We are responsible, we are humans, we understand what to do and we will do. So basically what had happened, that we had proved it to the Britishers that all your theories are wrong. So Britishers had to come up with a new theory. And what new theory they came up with? Protect the minorities. That your religion is in danger, that you minorities are in danger. This is how the Britishers used to speak. You will find this cry of minorities in danger even today. Isn't there similarity between these people speaking and the Britishers speaking? Of course there is, because all of these are politically motivated. So Britishers didn't just confine to the policy of divide and rule. It was much beyond that. They in fact tried to divide people on the basis of every possible aspect. So the divisions created by the Britishers in India were very, very varied. Now, but the point is that it was the communalism in particular which lasted the longest, and thus the biggest impact of the divisions, the cleavages created by the Britishers were visible in the form of communalism. Now, to understand the concept of communalism, you have to understand that when Britishers brought communalism, they could extend this. They could extend their narrow social base to workers, peasants, and the middle class. So all these people, which were earlier not under the influence of the wrong British policies, start getting impacted by them, and whose interests otherwise were in contradiction to colonialism. Now obviously these people were against colonialism. Colonialism ke against they were against the colonialism. So you see here and there sometimes I use Hindi word, but for all those people who do not understand Hindi, you don't have to worry. Everything that is said in Hindi is also said in English. Now most of the times though I am using English only. Now after this, how were Britishers doing this? I told you Britishers were communalizing people, but how? So the ways and the policies of the British, we'll talk about that. The Britishers, they treated Hindus, the Muslims, the Sikhs, the Christians, everyone as a separate community. And look at the condition today. Even today we have started calling us as separate communities. Ask Hindus, ask Muslims or the Sikhs or Christians. So many of them say, ask them who are, if you look for what's your identity, they'll say I'm a Sikh, but the truth is I'm a Hindu. But truth is your identity is Indian. It's a personal matter. In public sphere, how can you say that? It's your identity, is your personal matter, not in the public sphere. That amounts to communalism if you say that, and if you are okay with being communalist, that's your choice. Now they said that India is neither a nation nor a nation in the making. Now Britishers are saying this. All this British are doing this. They said India is neither a nation nor a nation in making. This is what they said, nation in making. Right? None of this is in India. Then what is India? They said, because they said nothing is India. India is actually it's a group of people who are mutually exclusive and antagonistic to each other. And they are antagonistic means they are in opposition to each other. And how they are in opposition? They are in the opposition on the basis of religion. Such were the British policies, on the basis of religion. Now what else British did? Like this is like one thing I talked about. Number two is number three British did. They started giving favors and patronages. Sometimes they will favor Hindus, sometimes they will favor Muslims. So that is another way of dividing. You see, if you favor one, other will say, oh, they are Hindu supporters. You start recognizing that way because they support all the Hindus. So that's how they started spreading communalism. Even many politicians do that. Many of them are very good actually. So many politicians are good. No, you cannot generalize, but many are really bad. Then communal press and persons were shown extraordinary tolerance. If you print something in your press, in your newspaper, some which is communal, Britishers were very tolerant towards it, and all other nationalist press, Britishers were intolerant towards them. Then number 5, the communal demands were readily accepted. For example, from 1885 to 1905, Congress, which had both Hindus and Muslims, were having nationalistic demands from the Britishers. They were seeking from Britishers certain things. Britishers said, no, we won't give you. But in 1906, the communal demands of Muslims were accepted there, of the communal Muslims. When I say communal demands of Muslims, obviously by the communal Muslims. Not every Muslim is a communalist. Yeah, many of them are nationalist. And I can give you one more example. Number 2 is, during the World War II, Muslim communalists were given complete veto on any political advance. The World War II, this I will be talking about this in detail very soon. So what's happening? Whenever the demands arose, so Britishers would agree to it if it is communal demand. British accepted, okay, let's change the color for sake of visibility. We written up to point 5. Number 6, you see, British accepted the communalist leaders as the real spokesperson of their communities. Right? Now, who's that true leader of this? They would say, there is a leader of Muslims. How can there be a leader of the Muslims? Even today, some people claim that I am the leader of Hindus, I am the leader of the Muslims. You see, if you are a leader, that has nothing to do with the polity of the nation. If you are trying to divide the people, it is just what Britishers used to do, 50, 100 years back. These guys are 100 years back, 70 years back. These guys are doing today. When they say, I am the leader of sects, I am the leader of Muslims, I am the leader of Hindus. What? You can be leader of the people of India. You can be leader of Uttar Pradesh or leader of people in Jammu and Kashmir. But how can you be the leader of particular religion? That's a communal idea in itself. Then separate electorates. Separate electorates, that means that suppose there is a constituency. Only a Hindu can fight election. Only Hindus can vote in this election. Or only Muslim can fight, only a Muslim can vote in this election. What will happen? Is India just composed, is any district of India composed just of one religion? No. There are people always of some other religion. What about them? Will not that create animosity among the people? And that's what exactly happened. Now, British followed the policy of non-action, of inactivity when it came to communalism. So number 8 point is policy of inactivity. You see, you do wrong thing and that's it. You then whatever you want to do, let people follow communalism. The Britishers followed these direct things, but Britishers were very clever, and one direct thing that Britishers did, which is a little complex thing, and I'll just explain you that. And this thing is related to the Muslims. What happened? That political consciousness, you can make a flow chart of this in your copies. Political consciousness came late in Muslims. There are many reasons for this. For example, one of the primary reasons was that the education came very late in Muslims in particular. So Britishers discovered this pattern that in Muslims political consciousness is not there. Now nationalism started growing. We know this thing. Meanwhile, nationalism was growing. And when nationalism was growing among the Hindus and the Parsis of the lower middle class, if I have to say that, of Hindus and Parsis of the lower middle class, it did not grow in the Muslims. In them, it did not grow to the extent it grew in Hindus and Parsis. Not that it did not grow at all. So equally, it didn't grow at that rapid pace. But in the background, we already know this, that the Hindus and Muslims were like brothers. 1857 revolt, they fought together, and right up to 1875 they were fighting together only. The Hindus, the Muslims, all the religions, they fought together as one, not as separate entities. We have discussed this in the revolt of 1857 also in one of the earlier lectures when I discussed this revolt. Now, After 1857 revolt, this revolt got over. Right, revolt is over and the things have cooled down. Britishers were very much against the Muslims. Britishers said it is Muslims who have created a lot of trouble and we will punish them. And 27,000 Muslims were hanged by the Britishers in Delhi alone. 27,000 Muslims. And because the Britishers did that, and then I find a lot of people praising the Britishers. I mean, such ignorance about what wrongs they committed is unimaginable. Anyway, and from now on, from this moment, whenever Muslims were seen, they were looked on with suspicion. You see, just like these days, what happens that if there is a terrorist, people say it's a Muslim. Now you see, just because there are terrorists who follow Islam religion, they name it that they are following, doesn't mean that every Muslim is a terrorist. Same applies for all other religions. Just because there are few terrorists who claim to be following some religion, they cannot. Not all people of that religion become terrorists. But here the Britishers started saying that all Muslims are troublemakers for them. This is what the Britishers started saying. Now British started realizing that this attitude is not working for them. So 1870s onwards, they started changing their attitude towards the British. And what had happened that by 1870s, the nationalist movement, this movement had started getting active in the British states, in British areas. This movement was active, and Britishers realized that just controlling the Muslims or hanging the Muslims will not work for them. They must work toward controlling this nationalist movement, and for this people must be divided, and Hindus and Muslims must be divided. And to check the growth of this united national feeling, because Hindus Muslims are very united people, they were fighting together just like an Indian army does, right? Indian army has no people of no religion. If you Indian army has 0 sects, 0 Muslims, 0 Hindus. I told you earlier also 0 Christians. Why? Because that's a personal matter. When you're serving in Indian army, you have just one religion, Indian. So these people were fighting together up to 1870s, and nationalist movement grew stronger because Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, everyone was together there, right? Now to check this growth, they said, okay, now we need to do something. And what to do? They said, we will divide you. How? On the basis of this policy of divide and rule. Okay. Now how did they divide people? कैसे तोड़ा लोगों को? How did they divide? To divide the people, they said we will do this on what basis? On the religious lines. And on the religious lines, they started dividing people. Now, further, in other words, they started encouraging communal politics, as I just discussed a few minutes back. And for this purpose, they said, okay, now the best thing that we can do to divide the people is to be the champion of Muslims. Now we will support Muslims. Look at the double standard. First they had 27,000 Muslims in Delhi alone, and now they are trying to become the champions of the Muslims. And then what to do? Win over the Muslim zamindar. To take his favor, to support him by favoring him, and then he will support the Britishers. And this way, what will happen? This over here, this nationalist movement over here, this will weaken up. This is how the things were being talked about, right? Now, when this thing happened, so they also all tried to divide people, not just on the basis of religion. They promoted provincialism by they started saying that in Bengal there is a Bengali domination. This needs to be checked. So they started questioning the Bengali domination. They said, no, Muslims are being dominated in Bengal, so we need to divide them. And that is why we saw in one of the earlier lectures regarding the division of the Muslims and Hindus in the name of dividing Bengal, but they were actually dividing people only. And then they tried to utilize the caste structure also. And what happened? That's another division that they created. They tried to divide the non-Brahmins against the Brahmins. I was listening to this debate on casteism, and one of the people who was from backward class, his argument was that it was the Britishers who took care of the non-Brahmin interest. You know what? That man is ignorant. He claims to be very knowledgeable, but he is ignorant. Why? Because the British policy was not to bring forward the backward classes. That was done by the Constitution of India. Britisher policy was to divide the people of India so that there can be no nationalist movement. And when there is no nationalist movement, you see, I'll just change the color. They wanted to divide these over here rather than uniting them. They further strengthened the division than uniting the people. And then after this, they wanted to weaken the nationalist movement, and when the nationalist movement is there, there will be no freedom. That was their plan. But some people don't understand this plan. Anyway, let's move ahead. In UP and Bihar, Hindus and Muslims always lived in peace. You see, in UP and Bihar in particular, UP and Bihar, Hindus and Muslims always lived in peace. Obviously, they're, minor altercations are always there, but they can happen anytime, anywhere, whatsoever the level of peace be. Even in the most peaceful countries of today, for example, this Norway, Sweden and Finland, even their disputes do happen. But in UP and Bihar, where Hindus and Muslims always lived in peace, they actively encouraged the movement, to replace Urdu as the court language by Hindi. Okay, to replace Urdu as a court language by Hindi. Now, I tell you one thing. Urdu is not the language of Muslims, and Hindi is not the language of Hindus. Please understand this thing first of all. Language is merely a medium of communication. Yes, language has other things associated, for example, the culture, the society, the jobs, the government jobs in particular, and so many other things. But religion, please, religion has nothing got to do with language. Though some languages do develop, most of the languages, actually all languages develop with literature, and some languages develop with the religious literature. But that doesn't make the language belonging to particular religion. Okay. Now, one last point I wanted to talk to you. It is the wrong interpretation of history. Wrong history. Now, most of the times, if you talk to anyone on the topic of how the communalism was spread across India by the Britishers, they will come up with this point, and they will miss most of the point that I said earlier. But you don't miss those points. This is important point, but so are the others. And what happened? That there was a foolish Britisher. His name was James Hill. He created a mountain of the problem for Indians, and what he did was that he said that the medieval period was a Muslim period, and the ancient period was a Hindu period of history. Now, I have a question for you, that how is that possible even? But the truth is that the medieval period, the Muslim was the ruler. But that does not mean that the people who were there, who were ruled, were just the Hindus. There were Muslims also. There were people from other religions also who were being ruled. And trust me, in most of the administrations, even Hindus were part of the administration, even though the ruler was Muslim. And where the ruler was Hindu, for example, in the case of Rajasthan, let's say Jaipur or some other places where the ruler was a Hindu, they had Muslim prime ministers. So everywhere what you observe is that there was bonhomie between the people. But these Britishers, they did not see that. They did not see that how the medieval period of India contributed to Indian economy, Indian technology, Indian art, culture, literature, and science, and philosophy, and religion, and so on. So this guy James Hill, he failed to appreciate all this, and all they could find from the history was just one person, who of course was known for his notoriety, and that was Aurangzeb. Now, how can you criticize the whole period of the Mughal history or the medieval period as on the basis of just one ruler, that is Aurangzeb? What about other rulers? They were pretty good. They contributed a lot to India. And you see, if any atrocity was committed by a ruler, it was not because of the religion involved. It was because of their political interest. It wasn't religion based. Yes, there have been few people, and these people always existed. But for all these people, ultimate thing was to rule. That all that mattered to them. Now, in this background, how can our people stay away? Because in India there were many opportunists. There were people other than the British who wanted to rule in India. What kind of people? For example, there were Hindu zamindars, there were Muslim zamindars, there were people even like today who wanted to be leaders, and all these people will always use whatever opportunity that came their way. And one of the opportunities that came their way, they would use any opportunity that came their way, and one of the opportunities that came their way was through the path shown by the British, and the path was of communalism. And this way, this path was followed, and this led to communalism, the growth of communalism in Hindus as well as the Muslims. Not every Hindu is a communalist, not every Muslim is a communalist, but there were few people, and this thing overall did have its impact on the Indian freedom struggle, and that is why I wanted to talk about this communalism to you. What kind of communalism spread in them, that will make part of the next lecture. So let's see, we will be discussing mainly the Muslim and then the Hindu communalism in the next lecture, and of course all the impact that it had on Indian nationalist movement. Do not miss any lecture on communalism. I am telling you, though the topic of the lecture is communalism, but there will be questions in your paper, because I am going to discuss lot of facts, lot of important information for the purpose of exam during all these lectures. Right now, after this, before this lecture ends, as always, I want you to share this video with the people you care for. You see, it's a mission actually, right? To spread the message, to spread the education, and I want your support on this. And that you can do just by sharing it with others. You don't have to do that just online. You can do that offline. You can talk to your friends, you can talk to your relatives who might be interested in history, or maybe they are writing any exam. And do click on the like button. That moment you click on like button, everyone gets to know what kind of lecture is this. Data numbers are there. And then last thing, if you want such videos to come in your email box, then you will need to subscribe to us, and that you can do by clicking on this button here, right? So that is all, and thank you so much for watching this video.